Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Zeffy webinar. Really happy to have everyone here today. We're going to dive right in. We have a lot of content to get through. So thank you for joining us. Let us know where you're from and how you are using Zeffy in the chat to kick things off. And yeah, we'll jump right in here. So today we are talking about how to spring clean your Zeffy account with a real world event walkthrough. So before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items. We have you all for 45 minutes and then 15 minutes of Q&A. For all your questions, please submit them through the Q&A function. You can see it down in the bottom tab. That's how we sort through the questions, and we'll be taking questions throughout the session as opposed to right at the end. So feel free to submit as we go. And we will be sharing the recording slides and the spring cleaning guide later today, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. And with that, I'm super excited to introduce David DuCharme. He is the financial advisor at DuCharme Wealth Advisors and serves as a treasurer for the Milton Hershey School Alumni Association. He uses nearly every Zeffy product, from raffles, events, memberships, to donations, peer-to-peer auctions, and custom forms, and they have raised over 100K on Zeffy. You also may recognize him from our February session, where he shared some of his bookkeeping tips and process for reconciliation. And we're really excited to have him back. So welcome, David, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Julia. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be back, and I appreciate you guys taking the time here to go through what I thought was a really cool idea when Julia presented it to me, the idea of spring cleaning and marrying that to a nonprofit operations. Because, we have so many tasks that they don't find a home. Certain things have very dedicated calendar places, and others not so much. They're equally important, perhaps, but they just don't have a natural cadence. So I thought that was a great idea. So we put together the spring cleaning checklist that covers things inside of Zeffy, but also outside of Zeffy that just might be good practices for your organization. So happy to share that with everybody. What we're going to do today is going to go through some of those key checklist items. We're not going to hit the whole thing, but we're going to do so through the lens of a real world event. So we're going to look at the Milton Hershey School Alumni Association's Alumni Fellowship Weekend. And this is one of our largest events that we hold each year. Typically, it sees maybe around 1,000 participants, a few hundred. And it's a fantastic way for our alumni to come back, engage with our graduating senior class, and really welcome them into the Alumni Association. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here just to show you what we're building towards today in terms of, let's see, in terms of the event. Let me just find my share screen feature here. Perfect. Okay. So first, we'll take a quick peek at the actual event page itself, just so you can see what the finished product is looking like. This is our Alumni Fellowship Weekend. It's a multi-day, multi-event, weekend. So we have free components of the event, like maybe exploring the school's campus, welcome back to the alumni facility. And then there may also be paid events like a president's reception dinner, for example. We'll show you today how we use things like custom questions and fields to really get the data that we need to have a strong partnership with the school, and also to have good reporting for our stakeholders, board members, and executive officers. So this is the final product. You'll see it's quite elaborate. It's a full registration form for the weekend, and it uses everything from individual events, free events, and then also a pay what you can ticket, which we thought was a really fun addition within the past few months to the Zeffy platform. So what this event it looks like in practice is, to date, we've raised around $12,000, I want to say, for the event. And we're going to get back to this dashboard here right at the end just to share how you can leverage the dashboard and guest list for some reporting for stakeholders. So by the end of this, I hope that you guys pick up and learn something that can help you to execute on your event, maybe improve your donor management or stakeholder reporting and engagement. So before we get into the actual event building, let's kind of start with the spring cleaning angle and talk about what is important to do maybe before you even get started building an event. The first thing we're going to talk about is user access. So when you're inside of Zeffy here, on the bottom left of your screen, you'll be able to see invite a user, and you'll also be able to see settings. And that's sort of the user access component. Invite a user is where you can invite your teammates. So this might be members of your organization. This might be members of your fundraising committee. This could be members of partner organizations where your collaborative fundraising efforts are occurring. And so it's a pretty basic invitation form here. You'll send that through. And we recommend going into the settings though and looking at, we'll see here, manage users. It's right in organization in the middle. I'm going to blow that up a little bit for the people sitting in the back. And we'll click there. In this template workspace here, you'll see we just have one user. You will be able to see various users and edit their permissions from, are they an administrator? Are they a regular user? Can they access things like payments? Or maybe you want people to build a campaign for you, but you don't want them to see the bank account payouts, right? Maybe you don't want them to accept tap to pay or look at the guest list. So you have a good amount of customizability here within the manage users features. We use various levels of access for whether it's a donor that maybe supported an endowment that wants some of the reporting on the fundraising over time, and maybe also input as to the language surrounding that scholarship or program. But also it's good for if you're in a partnership with another organization, again, the collaborative nature of that. So I'm going to pause here just with the user access, and if we have any questions, happy to take them. I see a couple came through, maybe what type of campaign you're using. Yeah, for this particular campaign, that's a great question. I want to say it's a custom or multi-event. Let's see, other sales is probably where we have this one lining up. Excuse me, this one, apologize. This is an event. This is an event form. And the reason it's an event form is because it has the date. So occasionally we have used the other sales, but the event form will allow you to put a date right on this. If I show you here, so select the date, and that's sort of what ties it into the event style landscape versus just being another sale or sort of a group of sales. So uh, that was the only question I saw there. We'll keep it moving here with the user access. So importing context, I think, is a big deal. When we came to Zeffy, we didn't come prepared to import right into Zeffy. We didn't have a lot of experience necessarily with managing CRM systems. So the important thing was we had a list from our QuickBooks and from another software, Razor's Edge, if you're familiar, that we were using to maintain our alumni database and membership ledger. But as you can imagine, the fields in any two systems, the likelihood of them, being 100% the same between the systems is not too likely. So we ran into a situation where Zeffy didn't have some fields that maybe QuickBooks or Razor's Edge had, but then also Zeffy had additional fields that, again, those other programs may not have. So what I want to talk with you through today is how we can leverage some really simple tools to import your contacts into Zeffy without data loss, even if the specific data is not tied to an existing Zeffy input. So the example I'll give you here, if we pull up Natasha and we look at the specific details that are in this profile, have first name, last name, email, phone number, address, zip code, city, state. Now you may have people that have two email addresses, or you may have people that you've tracked their maiden name, right? And so these situations may arise where there's a piece of data, there's not a custom field in Zeffy, but you don't want to lose that ability to map that data. And also, if Zeffy at some point adds the ability for custom fields, you want to have access to that data to consolidate it later. So what I'm going to show you here is the process of importing contacts. We're going to navigate first to contacts. We're going to go to import, import a file. This is going to be an Excel-based file. You can generate this in Google Sheets and save it as an Excel file. You'll start by downloading this template here. This is the uh, Zeffy template. So can everybody see this Excel file? I see people shaking their heads. Yes. Okay. So these are the fields that we can map to Zeffy directly. You'll see your language, English or French, email, last name, first name, address, city phone, right, all the way to the end of subscription status. So when we import, though, our contacts, instead of looking like that, our contacts may look something like this. And I'll zoom in here again for the people in the back. We may have first name, last name, maiden name, class year, member status, home and cell phone, secondary email, country. In other words, data that is not, United Kingdom, I think, or maybe a language, for example, that's not English or French. So how do we keep that data for our members and not lose it? All righty, let me just get these both pulled up here. So the way that we're going to do this quite simply, in fact, is the first step is to identify which columns do not have a mapping that we're going to need to move over to a consolidated field. So what we're going to do essentially from a bird's eye view is we're going to take the maiden name, we're going to take maybe the class year, the second email, and we're going to try to dump this all into a custom note for each contact that we're importing. So we'll delineate those notes with a comma. There'll be a comma in between, each piece of the note, and that'll allow you to extract that data later if you need to. But essentially, we want to take whatever we can. Maybe class year, for example, can actually go into a list as opposed to a note. We can make lists for each class year, and we have. So we will likely import contacts with the years of their class year being the list that they're tied to, or a list that they're tied to, I should say. But on any other data, we're going to move into this custom notes field. So how do we do that? What does that look like? So if you're in Google Sheets or Excel at this point, you have a friendly button at the top right that you may not have clicked yet called Copilot or Gemini. If you click that, what we're going to do is explain our problem in plain English to this um, Excel document. So in in this case, and I've kind of pre-written this out so you guys don't have to watch me think through this, but I am importing contacts into a CRM, client relationship management, right, Zeffy. Not all fields on this spreadsheet are available in the CRM. Therefore, certain fields, I need all of the data from any of those fields to be combined into a single note field, e.g., maiden name, Smith, comma, secondary email, fake email address, etc. The note field should be in column O. Fields that need consolidated are maiden name, second email, and country if it is not the US. So we've kind of just described here, here's what we have going on. We're consolidating these spreadsheets. We need these custom data fields to be in this new column here. You can click the Copilot button, type all that out, and I'm not promising you'll get this right on the first time, but you'll see here where uh, if we did this video a couple of years ago, I would be explaining to you a really long Microsoft Excel formula, perhaps to consolidate some of this data in a programmatic way, where Excel is looking at this from a formula perspective. The much quicker way to do this is this sort of AI-enabled spreadsheet. So you'll see here, it's just created the note column in column O. And so for Jordan Bennett, he has a secondary email. But for this individual, they had a maiden name, they had a secondary email. This person just had a maiden name. And so you'll find that the parameters that we've set here, right? Country, Canada, country, United Kingdom, country, Ireland. The parameters that we've set here where we're trying to identify specific data, consolidate it into a column. You could do this with a formula in either Google or Excel. I promise you this is the much quicker way to do it. I'd recommend go through and just double check, spot check, I would say, a few of the data points. And then to make this import actually live, as you can imagine, what we're doing is just taking the information that we have. So we'll take all of the first names, right? We're going to copy them. We're going to come over to first name here, and we're going to dump that in. Okay, so now we have first names. We're going to take all of the last names, et cetera, and dump them into this upload spreadsheet. We know that the format of this spreadsheet is correct because Zeffy gave it to us. right? We said that we're going to take class years and put them into our custom list so that we already have our classes sort of organized. And we'll continue on this note column that we just created, right? We'll take that one right at the end. And apologies if I've been sloppy and not grabbing all of these for the demo here. So we'll click and select, and there we go, notes. Oh, and apologize. You may get that if you do that quickly. You'll actually want to, when you paste this in here, this is a formula that the AI has put, so you'll want to just paste the text. That's when you right click to paste, that is this second option in here, values, not the formula. So you see if you do values, it's exactly what you're looking for. I'll show that one more time. You copy this, you come over here, right click to paste, and then put in the values. There's other ways to get around that, but it's trying to reference a file that is a separate file that it can't see. That's why you got that error the first time. Regardless, this spreadsheet here is ready for import. Once we filled in the rest of this information, we'd save the spreadsheet. We can go back to our Zeffy import. We're going to click next, select the file that we just did, and click import. It will show you any potential rows that have errors that aren't going to map directly. You can go through and fix and adjust those. It's a very simple process. And then your contacts are added into Zeffy here. So that's the quick way to import contacts. The longer way, obviously, without data loss, includes some of that programmatic um, formulas within Google Sheets or Excel, but I highly recommend using Gemini or Copilot to consolidate any of those extra data points into a single note field when you're importing your contacts, just so you don't lose the data for future reference. Any questions before we move on to bounced emails?
Yeah, David, there was a question from Gisela. Um, here, is your lists feature similar to a tag in other programs like Mailchimp? Also, is it
Yes.
possible to
Yep.
sort
Great
by
question.
segments, such as date of subscription?
Yes. So the list feature, in fact, I believe at one point was called tags, and they updated it to be called lists. And I think the idea had to do with the automated functionality. So you still have the ability to create a manual list with, and by a manual list, I mean a tag, right? If you're coming from another system, so you can create a new list or new tag. You can filter for how you're going to find the initial contacts, or maybe you have them in another system and you're going to be importing. In that case, you're simply creating the list here, add to manual list, create new manual list, and we're going to call this um, new new member tag, right? And just so you know, anytime you do import, each imported contact will have a tag from the import date. So you can always identify those exact contacts. You can always pull them out of the system. So you shouldn't be afraid to import. Try it. If you fail, pull them all out and try again. Um, it's a very forgiving system. So we create that, and now we have a new tag that we can add. For example, if that was the class year, we could put all the class years in the system, and then when we're on that spreadsheet, if we have that in the list, that will be sortable from that perspective. So yeah, it does function exactly like a tag, and you can filter from a number of different ways, subscriber status, etc., to create those lists. And I think more importantly, the distinguishing between the tag and the list, and maybe what Zeffy does a little differently with the automated lists, is just the ability to automate tags based on certain parameters. So if you created a list here, and you want certain if somebody donates to a certain campaign, they're added to a list, right? That is able to occur within Zeffy, whereas you don't have to add a manual tag to each contact. It's simply if they do this, then they get this tag applied to them. So it's a great question.
Nice, thank you. And I think she had a follow-up question around, can you add custom fields for contacts?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's one we're excited for the future of what how Zeffy adopts it. Currently, the way that I've seen it work is in these contact profiles, you have the default fields. However, anytime you make a campaign, you have the ability to make a custom question. And so these custom questions will actually live right below all of these. So if I go in here and show you guys just live, as we go to this alumni fellowship weekend. If we go down here to questions, and let's say we added uh, a custom question, class year affiliation. Yeah, perfect. Okay, buyer only, add another question, and we could do ticket holder. And let's have it be short answer. What is your favorite color? Okay. So with these think of these custom questions as being the custom contact fields. If you add a custom question, and Samaya, you might have to correct me here. If you add a custom question, I believe in any campaign, then that field will show up in every contact as something that potentially has an answer, although it might not have the answer. So if I go here to Natasha, let's see here if this follows through. Ooh, it does not in this one. Oh,
Yeah,
new custom. Oh, did you guys? Okay. You know what?
exactly.
They update things so quickly around here that the advice a week ago is a little different. So it looks like there are custom fields at this point. And Samaya, you might be able to talk a little bit more to those. Historically, they were not here, but it looks like they are now. So
Yeah.
maybe if you want to just step in and share a little bit about how those work, that'd be helpful.
Yes, so essentially, when you have a custom question that is included in any of your campaigns, when we first released this feature, all of the questions would automatically appear on the contact record if they had made a purchase on that same campaign. And you would also be able to edit, if that's relevant and if it needs to appear on the contact record to update how you view those responses to custom questions. And you can, yeah, you can do so from the contact page directly. So you would essentially be able to customize those properties completely in order to view custom answers that they've provided in previous campaigns. And if you have the same custom question that recurs throughout multiple campaigns, you'll have one field that's associated with that custom question, and it will update if, let's say, they make a payment a year later and provide a different answer than they've originally provided.
That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. I know that Julie and I had actually talked about that a couple weeks ago. So it sounds like the custom contact field is found in the details here. Manage contact properties. We're adding that, creating a label, and Samaya, just can you walk us through again how the custom questions tie to this field? Is that when you're building the form that you would tie those together?
Yeah, so what you're accessing now, the custom property is a little bit different. So the custom property
Great.
is really exactly as you mentioned, a custom property that you can add in the contact record directly. So you can see here, you can edit the format. All of the formats are very similar to the custom questions that you add to your campaigns. And you would be able to add in that custom property directly in the contact as you've done here. And the label would essentially be the name of the property. So let's say you have like the membership ID as the example says there that you would want to include on all contact records. You could
Sure.
label it as membership ID, and then you'll be able to fill that out for each contact. And you'll
Great.
also see it as a suggested custom question when you create your campaign,
Ah,
just in case
perfect.
you want
Okay.
to collect
Very
it
good.
as well when you're creating a membership form.
Great. Yeah, that's I think the last sentence there was the key. So
Yeah.
we can create as many custom fields as we want, and then once we've created these custom fields to access them when we're building these campaigns, they will be offered as potential custom questions, so that one question like class year can be asked 100 times, and it's not creating 100 answers; it's updating the answer if it were to change for any reason. So I like that a
Yes,
lot. Thanks for the explanation. That's helpful.
of course, you've got it.
Yeah, one quick interesting follow-up question on what Tim just commented. Can we import values for custom properties from the Excel spreadsheet?
It's a good question.
Um, yes, I believe so. I would just have to double check our contact import template. So if you give me a second here, I'll confirm in the chat.
Great.
Perfect. Thanks, Sumaya.
Of course.
Yep. thanks everybody for the patience, and sorry if it caught you guys off guard. It's a great example of the continuous improvements that are happening, and that's a really welcome one, the custom field. So I'm excited to see that kind of get fully flushed out. That's great. Yeah, so and I see Dean's question here, since you only have one email per contact, could you just create a new alias for the same individual with a secondary email? And that gets into the duplicate contact. I'm not sure if maybe somebody can speak to this, if those additional fields, if there's a way that if it is an email that and the email is associated with a new payment rather than duplicating it, if it would tie it to that existing contact. I'm not sure. That may be a question for her to take
Yeah.
if she has the answer. Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. So when you're thinking about imports into Zeffy, it's always important to keep in mind that the email is the primary identifier of the contact. So that means if you email historical payment records, let's say into Zeffy, you would be able to email multiple payment records all associated with the same buyer email and have them tied into one contact. So that also means that when you import contacts with one email address that would have like an existing transaction, with that same email address, it would be linked to their contact record. So as long as the email address that the buyer provides is the same as the email address that you have in your contact record, it will be associated with their contact record. So you have everything all cleaned up in one place. And it's the same thing that you can keep in mind for importing duplicates. If you re-import a contact with the same email as some record that you already have in the Zeffy platform, there will not be a duplicate contact created. If there's already a contact that's associated with that email, any additional information that you've changed in this new import will simply be updated to their contact record.
great. And just for clarification, does that look with the new transaction, whatever email submitted with that, would that look at any custom property that is an email as well, or just the primary email?
Just the primary email.
Okay. Okay. So it still might create a duplicate record if it's a separate email, it sounds like, for
Yes,
now.
exactly.
Okay.
So if you have like a secondary email noted,
Okay.
unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to link it. It would create a second email. Yes, exactly.
Great. Okay. Yep. And that's consistent. I think that's something that there's a lot of feedback on. And it's great to see the custom fields. I think that's the next step towards achieving that. Um, if I look here, if there's any other questions sort of with the import process, to import past transactions, there is a way to do that. You're not going to do it from the context page here in import. We're actually going to go to payments uh, and add payment import. Okay. So this is a very similar process where you have a template. You can denote if it was a cash card or other sort of payment. And this is a great way to, if you're coming from another system and you want to make sure that maybe the cumulative lifetime, donation amount for any one donor is kept, you could add either a single payment that is the accumulation of their previous payments into the profile so that their lifetime still reflects their lifetime giving. Or you could do that at an itemized level, but it is all possible right here with the payment template. Important to note that the payment template's the email being the primary identifier. So if you don't have an email for somebody, that contact payment may just go into a new record that you may need to merge later. So that is possible for the payment import as well. And Tristan asked if the custom property appears in the new campaign. It sounds like that's confirmed that when we're building campaigns, the custom questions will appear to show the custom properties we've created in the contact record. Can we use Zeffy to record cash sales at an event? Yes, we do that. And without getting too far off topic here, how this effectively works for our organization is this form will live as the form throughout the entire weekend. So at some point we will close registration. People will no longer be able to access this form. And then once we close it, we're going to remove any of the free items or the pre-registration items, things that are not for sale immediately. We will also add things that are for sale day of, things like maybe a raffle ticket or a beverage ticket. And these will get added to the same list. The benefit of doing so is that the reporting remains consolidated. So you will see here, for example, alumni senior brunch guest. This is an example of we had that as an item, we removed it, and rather the guest is now a second ticket of a specific type. But you will see that anything that gets archived, the data is not lost. It's rather denoted as archived. So you can have this campaign, do all of your pre-registrations for it, get your QR codes and everything ready. You can be ready at the event with maybe a laptop or some people accepting tap to pay. And you figure out the logistics of how you want to accept payments. But typically we have one person sitting at a computer, they're sitting here and they're really just doing this exact workflow here of adding payments, add manually, choosing the campaign, choosing the payment method, and then they're going to select here, two raffle tickets, three XYZ, whatever is being purchased, save, and add another. So you have somebody kind of processing cash transactions, almost like a POS, checkout. You don't have to add the contact information if you don't want to. You can add the contact information. So depending on, do you really care to track how many raffle tickets somebody bought once they're in the door? That's going to be a different answer for each organization. But it is absolutely possible to do that for the cash sales. Okay, secondary. I'm just looking through some of these other questions to see if we can get through any other helpful ones before moving on. Yeah, there's no secondary email on contacts for now. Update a date with the same answers. I can't. Can you man?
Yeah, there's one here, David, on if you have a contact that changes their email, will the new email create a new contact? If so, can we merge
Oh
contact?
yeah, let's go through that real quick. I think that's a great. We'll do the merge context and let's jump into bounced emails. I think those are kind of
Yeah.
similar. So for merge contacts, we can go through a couple ways to identify them. If you have 50,000 contacts in Zeffy or 30,000 contacts in Zeffy, you're going to want to export them to Excel, more actions, exports all contacts. And then you're going to want to follow that same exact workflow that we did for the notes field, merging those. You're simply going to tell Copilot, I have first name in column A, last name in column B, and I need to identify potential duplicates in column O that don't have an email address associated in column C. So you sort of, write that out to that, and it will do exactly that sort of identification for you to filter from, 50,000 down to 10,000. If you're a smaller organization, the quicker way may actually be to just filter by the name here, right? If you intuitively think about it, if they have the same last name, they could be a duplicate. So you can kind of go down here and just visually inspect if your list is short enough. And I'd say under a couple hundred is probably reasonable to do it this way without, you don't want the juice being worth the squeeze of downloading and, getting the Excel file, filtering that, and then coming back to Zeffy. This may just be quicker to do it this way. So in this case, there's not a lot of merge contact. Let's say we did identify one. Let's say that um, Brandon and Sonia Harris are one in the same. And I know that I don't have any that are the same, so we just have to bear with me for that. We're going to click on one of these contacts. Let's say Brandon Harris. We're going to go to actions and merge contact. You'll see a lot of actions in here. It's great to just familiarize yourself with what all you can do with a contact. Unsubscribe from emails is a great for, do not call, do not email notations. Merge contact here. Now we're going to go search Ford. Okay, well, here's Aaron Ford. This is who we want to merge this with. And the important thing when merging is one contact gets the priority. However, and it says right here, replaces the name, organization, email address. All of the data is combined. So your name, email address, and phone number, right, and your actual address is going to be replaced. Everything else will be combined. So you'll see here, we're going to say that Brandon, this is actually the updated information. This was a mistake, a pseudonym they were using when they were writing a famous book. We're going to merge those contacts. And now if I go in here to Brandon, what you can't see that you would see otherwise is if Aaron had payments, those would be in here. If Aaron had emails sent to him, that would be in here. So all of that data is combined very simply. So it's really about identifying the potential duplicates. Once you've identified them, you're going to click on that merge contact, find the potential duplicate. And if you have two or three, you may have to merge and then kind of merge again. There's not a way to, at this time, merge two or three together, or excuse me, three or more together. There is a way to do two, obviously. But you can do, two and then another two and kind of get things whittled down if folks have several email addresses that they're engaging with. So great question on how to merge contacts. Now, let's say you're emailing these contacts and you're worried that your emails aren't going through. Somebody asked, can you use this system to replace constant contact? We did. As far as the user interface, maybe there's a bit of a learning curve. It's different than constant contact. Hats off to Zeffy for the continuous improvement, though. So if you have an issue, let them know with what your functional or UI interface issue is, and they're likely to assist or at least add it to the roadmap. So when you send an email, it's a very simple workflow, new email. We don't need to work through all that now. However, once you've sent an email, you will see this dashboard, and it gives you really easily the bounced emails. You can click on that to get them filtered immediately. And they give you a couple of easy actions. You want to unsubscribe them. I think the safer action, we typically assign these to a human, right, to go and work through. We assign them to one of our office staff or board volunteers, someone to work through. There's not really a programmatical way to work through this unless you're subscribing to a LexisNexis or something where you're going to dump in this information and maybe get some updated information. For the most part, most organizations are going to be clicking on this name here, looking at that phone number, dialing it, and saying, "Hi, Leah, we don't have your email address. This is, Dave with the Milton Hershey School Alumni Association." Probably a little bit more tactful than that, but essentially you're working through this list individually, resetting the email addresses and making sure you have good information with your donors. So again, that's in the communication. You can click on the actual email that you've already sent, click on bounced, and you'll be able to just work through that one at a time. So great question. Anything else that's maybe popped in? Let me go just double check on some Q&A here.
Maybe if I can just jump in, someone
Sure.
asked a really interesting question about the difference between importing payments and importing contacts. So I don't know, David, if you want to go ahead and explain, or I'd also be happy to, about the difference between the two and what you should do if you need to import both at the same time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to defer to you for that,
Yeah,
or I can
of
click around
course.
where we need. Yeah.
Of course. So essentially, especially if you're importing historical payments that maybe would have been processed outside of Zeffy, then when you import payments, you can know that all of the contact records, if they don't currently exist in Zeffy's system, will automatically be created when you import a payment. Therefore, if you're looking to move over to Zeffy from another platform, it's not necessary to do both. And no duplicates will be created if you re-import a payment with a contact that you already have in Zeffy. Any new contacts that don't exist in Zeffy when you import your payments will be created with the buyer information that you have provided directly in the payment import. And you'll be able to view before your information is finalized, a preview of how the fields will be mapped. So you'll be able to check for any records that maybe haven't been filled out correctly or any duplicate records, and you'll actually be prompted to correct those by our system automatically, so you can have a look over before it's imported.
That's great. Yeah, thanks so much, Maya. I see somebody just asked a quick question around donations exceeding $10,000, particularly if it's maybe a restricted donation or endowment, you may see a larger amount come in. Um, all campaigns have the ability, and I highly encourage folks to use it just if you understand how this infrastructure works, to check a box that encourages donations above a certain amount to send a check. And the reason for this is uh, the payment processor that Zeffy is using to process these payments doesn't typically care too much about the amount of zeros after the dollar amount here. They are going to charge a percent fee based on that payment amount and assess that to Zeffy. It's unlikely that that donor donating $10,000 is going to give a 5 or 10% offset to offset the processing fee that Zeffy is eating for your organization. So just in the spirit of good business, I highly recommend folks, check this box every time. It's no hassle to maybe have a quick copy paste where you have this saved somewhere else. When we build our endowment or restricted fund language, we have specific, ways that we want the checks made out, so we can just copy that from that language and put it in here. But I highly encourage the donations above a certain amount just to be cognizant of that fee for credit card or bank processing doesn't disappear entirely and just go away. It is being eaten by Zeffy, so that's just to be cognizant of those larger check amounts.
David, there's a question here, interesting one. Is there a way to link related constituent profiles, such as married couples or family members, so that gifts can be jointly credited to both individuals? This would help ensure that staff understand donor relationships and improve stewardship, including connecting alumni with parents or grandparents.
That's a great point. I
Yeah.
can speak to a little bit, and then I'll defer to the team. One of the ways that you could do that is with sort of creating little households as lists almost. Um, I don't know that there's a way to have two contact profiles linked together. I'll defer to, the team there to like select two people and say these are the same person. Now you can just as easily select these two, right? Filter by last name, add to a manual list and call it the White household. And so that might be I won't call it a workaround, but maybe a solution for what you're looking for. I understand what you're saying in that some systems will have the ability to link contact profiles and create a household kind of automatically through that connection. I don't know that I've seen anything specifically like that. Is there anything that you guys can speak to?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we currently don't offer that capability, but it is something that we'll be looking into in the future. It is one of our popular feature requests. But I think the solution that you had suggested of creating different lists to group households or potentially adding the household name in the notes is really helpful for grouping contacts together because you can later filter directly in the contacts tab by the content of the notes. So you would easily be able to search for those households. If you have situations where certain donors, maybe a married couple who share the same email address, you could always, what I suggest is to add in the first name of both contacts. So like John and Sherry, just in the first name field, and that way you have them grouped as one contact, and you can distinguish yourself. And when you send them emails, the variable will include both of their names, so communication will always be addressed to both of them. That would be the best way to work with that situation for now.
Yeah, we actually do that with some husband-wife couples, exactly as you described.
Yeah.
Maybe they share an email address. They always, come to events together. They register together. So there are instances that will combine that. We haven't done the householding of contacts, but it certainly makes sense for some organizations. I want to make sure, unless feel free to cut me off if there's another great question that you guys see. I just want to touch a little bit on building the actual campaign. I think it's important, to look at uh, how to build the campaign, why to do, certain things the way that we do. This left-hand menu is sort of what you're going to live and die by when you're building these Zeffy campaigns. You want to make sure you hit each button with a great degree of care. I've seen, even glazing over the date and then it defaults to today's date as opposed to the actual event date. So also, if you copy an event from year to year, we use that. We'll build out this entire platform. We'll copy it next year when we do the same event. We'll update the pictures, update the offerings, but you have to make sure that you're updating everything. So you're updating who are the people who can participate, right? I think we call that like where are the notifications going to, who are the people that have access to the campaign. So that sort of goes into your user management. So especially when you're duplicating or copying an archived event, it's a great practice. You just want to be cognizant of that. Where we find a lot of success for reporting and for um, building out these platforms is the tickets is your framework. I think that makes a lot of sense for most people. The custom questions though are going to allow you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do within Zeffy. And the benefit of these custom questions now tying to back to a contact profile, it's pretty game changer from where they were, 6 months ago even. So that's a huge win for organizations to be able to ask a question, get that tied to the contact profile, be able to go back and find that. So we use that just to show here. We use that with, um, let's go to this campaign. When we're selling tickets for an event, for example, the president's reception, we want to know for every guest the full name and the class year. We might have people that are married and they're alumni. Uh, Maybe they have no affiliation that the guest does, but if there's 2 tickets, we want to know for each person the full name. So this is where those custom questions, the ability to ask a question per ticket, and beyond just asking the question per ticket, um, not asking it for all ticket types, but rather saying, okay, I want to ask this for specific ticket types. I don't care about the full name of everybody buying a Hershey Park ticket. I don't care who else going to Hershey Park. That's fine. But maybe I want to know who's coming to the school's campus, right? Um, so the custom questions really a big power up. If you're not using them, I highly recommend get in there and figure out how customized you can get with your event offerings and what reporting gaps you might be able to solve by offering kind of tickets in this manner. So um, I wanted to touch on that because I think it's pretty important. Um, Let me see if there's anything else on the building that we wanted to cover. It's always best practice, just especially if you're copying these from year to year, review your branding, review your language, make sure that your best version of the nonprofit, copy is coming out. These thank you emails, there are snippets that you can save. So when you create automated emails, I'm going to save this, create automated emails. Um, if you let it be a default email, right? This is best regards, XYZ. Okay. This isn't too friendly looking. It's a great placeholder, but these snippets on the left-hand side, your snippets, you can pull it into now there's a full, you've built this one time. You can use it from year to year. You can use it from event to event. So we might, just change a couple things. And this goes from being a fellowship weekend snippet to a homecoming snippet. It's the same style email, same thing that's going to go out. Highly recommend saving that when you build something in the email editor here. It's pretty intuitive as like a Word document email editor. You're just going to go snippet, save as new snippet, or update snippet if you've already saved it here. And that's how you're going to be able to kind of keep these. I don't know, and maybe Samaya you can talk to. I don't think that if you build an email in the communications section that it saves as a snippet. I believe that you have to build it within the automated email section here of the campaign and save it as a snippet, and then it saves. Is that general? She's shaking her head. Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how it works. Okay, great. Um, uh, yeah, the other thing here is just oh, let's get rid of that. Let's just exit. And it's going to give me an error message, maybe. That's okay. We will get out of it somewhere. Okay. So here we go. The other best practices, as you can imagine, the number of events that you have can start to become voluminous. I think if you recall our campaigns, our past campaigns list is certainly longer, but if we were scrolling through each of these campaigns every single time trying to find something, it would take forever. So we highly recommend that from your ongoing campaigns, your 3 dots and end campaign. I believe it used to be archive, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe the delete button is the nuclear option, Samaya, but to move it from ongoing to past, is that end campaign or archive?
Yeah,
Oh,
so it used to be archive and now it's end campaign. So that'll make sure that you move it to the past section and that
perfect. Okay,
all sales won't be processed
great.
anymore.
Very good. So delete is the nuclear option. Stay away from that button unless you want to get rid of it forever, as the name implies. And campaign is going to move you from ongoing to past, just to keep this visual clutter, especially if you have an admin that's processing payments at an office for different things. I mean, we run everything through Zeffy. So if somebody sends a check to our office, they're going to go in here and say, okay, well, this was for the homecoming chapter. Let's go in and open up their chapter form here, process the payment, or do that from the payment screen. So um, I'll pause there as we talked about building the campaign and some of those details. We've got about 10 minutes left. I think we already touched a little bit on communications, but I'm happy to dive into that email feature. I know someone was curious about the constant contact um, and reporting we can also hop into. But let me pause here. Any questions specifically related to building the campaign or anything else we just went over? Let's see. Oh, okay. How do you access a previous registration list? For example, participants from last year. So what you're going to do is go in and build actually a custom list. So in this case, we're going to go to contacts. You can use a couple of ways. Actually, the cleanest way is with the list. So you're going to go to lists here, um, new list, and you're going to filter for the campaign, fundraising campaign is, let's say that I had one of these for 2025, right? Past one, right? I could click that and say, okay, now, so this is going to be a list that is anybody that purchases this, and this is how I was talking about the automated kind of feature of the list. Anybody that purchases for Alumni Fellowship Weekend ever is going to show up on this list. Um, you can see your automatic or manual. It's a one time if you just do it on manual. If it's automatic, that means that again, ongoing. So we will use this, for example, when we do our homecoming event. We have a lot of folks that their dues expired at some point through the year, and we want to make sure that we've captured their annual dues. So we'll run a list that say fundraising campaign is homecoming and uh, membership status, right? Or membership expiration date. You can filter this a number of different ways. Membership status is expired, right? And so this, or uh, you could go to fundraising campaign uh, is not, and then choose one of the lifetime membership, is not a lifetime member, has not paid annually. So you can kind of filter this down to what you need to identify, the people that might be relevant to your event. Um, so that's the previous registration list. Okay. Yeah, custom questions that you've created to import them. It sounds like if you're going to want to ask the same question multiple times and it's not just a one-off per event, the best place to add that is going to be in the contact profile. So you'll add that actually as a contact property. So custom property, sorry, it's over here, details, edit, manage contact properties. So if it's something you want repeatable across your organization, your member base, you can add that here. If it's a one-off, what color tie do you want or what color, beads do you want for the Mardi Gras event? It's just gonna be for the one event. You don't really care about keeping that from year to year unless you really want to be, a stickler about the beads from year to year. But um, yeah, that's definitely possible. When we get to it, is there a way to have a sponsorship that has been sold out, stay up on the list of options? Yes. So, Aaron, your question around the quantity of sponsorships available. When you're building any campaign, you can specify the tickets available. So on the actual ticket page, and this is part of the going into the details of each of these, it's very easy to write general admission, put $25 in here, and move on to the next thing. But this more option is actually where everything lives that you're gonna care about a little bit more. How many tickets are total available? We're only offering 5 sponsorships, right? We don't want anybody to purchase more than one sponsorship at a time. Um, and yes, we want this to be a tax deductible donation. The full amount of the $25 is tax deductible. Um, we don't want them to pay what we can for the sponsorship ticket, but maybe for another one we do. It's not a group ticket or in an early bird, but the early bird would expire at a certain time. So you don't book it by a certain time. Now you can no longer book it. That pricing goes away. But this will, I believe this will show like sold out if you've sold the one, and Samaya, I might have to tag you for that one as well. Um, Once the maximum is hit, I don't think that it disappears necessarily, maybe just shows unavailable or sold out.
Yes, exactly. It would disappear as sold out on the form.
Great. Okay, let's keep going here. To what extent does tap to pay through the app create a contact in Zeffy? Historically, it did not. Has that changed?
So essentially, now you do have the option for contact record creation, but it would only be in the case that the donor either checks the option if you have tax receipts that are enabled on that specific campaign that you're completing the payment for. If they opted to receive a tax receipt, then we would then collect their contact information through the app to both generate a tax receipt, and a contact record would also be created associated with that same information. And alternatively, if you're not generating tax receipts for your campaign, the donor, the buyer will always have the option to check to receive their transaction receipt after the purchase is made, in which case they would need to enter their email, which would create a contact record. But usually, if they don't check either of those options, we accept minimal information for tap to pay, so it wouldn't create a contact record if not.
Great. Yep. And that's we tend to leverage it in our event just for kind of logistics purposes. Anywhere you don't need the contact. So if you're selling something, you're like, well, we just need speed over here. We don't care who's buying. That's probably where you want to deploy some of your folks that are comfortable with the tap to pay. And then maybe you have someone that's comfortable on the computer collecting cash and getting names, and they're selling an item or a service or a ticket or event registration that is a little bit more, you want to collect the information. So it's always a consideration. And we have those discussions internally around what do we want to collect data on? What don't we want to collect data on? Where does volume, we don't want to line out the door because we're asking people to punch in their email addresses. We don't want to hand our phone maybe to 100 different people at an event. So there's considerations to how you want to do it. Is tap to pay where you want to be collecting contact information? Probably not, just for the logistics of it. Not that it's not possible though. Can you move a payment? Absolutely. Once you have a payment, let me just go in here real quick. If there is an existing payment, you can't move it. I just did this the other day. You can't move it from one donor to another, but you could delete that payment and rebuild that payment under another donor, as long as it's not I believe one that's come through Zeffy as like a card payment that would have to be refunded and then reprocessed. For the case of this payment here, instead of purchasing this, maybe Julia calls our office and says, I don't want to, I don't want to do this ticket. I know that we don't have this fully built out, but here's where you'd be able to sort of move that ticket. And I believe there's a way to move it within campaigns. Am I remembering that incorrectly, Samaya? Can you
Yes.
move these here? Same thing.
Yes, you are
Yep.
correct. So you can always move a donation in between other donation campaigns to associate them with another campaign.
Okay.
And the small feature that you were just clicking through is the ability to transfer tickets to another date. If you have a multi-date event, you would also be able to change dates for the buyer retroactively.
Great. Yep, that's a good question. Ticketing, are going to continue working. Um, ticketing, export, consolidate. Okay, let's talk about reporting real quick, and then we'll come back to questions. So when you're doing this, uh, when you have a Zeffy campaign and you're collecting payments, and maybe you have stakeholders, in our case, it's the school saying, hey, how many people have registered for our lunch, right? We have this day event. The best way to find that is right here. You can get sort of this summary level detail of, okay, we know there's 63 people registered for this, the brunch for general admission. We know 23 additional seniors are being sponsored for lunch. So you can kind of go through and get this exact breakdown and share it with the team. You can also share access to this dashboard with the team, so they can access that. Now, let's say that the information they want is a little bit more intimate. I don't care that there's 65 people coming to the event. I want to know who those 65 people are. That's where you're going to drill down into the guest list. And then you'll be able to sort by, actually by event. So or by ticket, I should say. So guest list, and we're going to go ticket type. Well, maybe I only want to see the people that are coming to the president's reception, or the ones that have done a sponsorship. So I can apply that. It's going to show me here's all the people, and here are their questions and notes. Now, I will say if you have a lot of questions on a form, it could be challenging to discern what answer this is to which question, clicking on it is the best way to kind of get through that. So if you're going and somebody's in the database live, they can very easily. Now for exporting purposes, if I need to get this to a school partner and they're going to put this in their database, the better way to do this is to export the itemized payments for the weekend. And to share the data that way, because that will have an individual field for each of the custom questions and all the other details. So that's just a quick piece on reporting that it really is full circle. You can, give user access in the beginning, share reporting data, compare notes, and really plan for a smooth event. So that is the bulk of what we wanted to kind of get through. I'm just going to keep going through these questions. Looks like there's a lot of questions that have come through. So I want to be respectful of your time if we need to stop at any point, but also happy to, address any more. Yeah.
Yeah, David, maybe one or two more, but it is are at the top of the hour here. So, and
Great.
we know that everyone has a lot of questions. We will follow up to those who did not get their question answered. But yeah, I think we have time for maybe one or two more before we drop.
Great. Yeah, I'm just going through why would you not delete bounced contacts? Maybe it's just that their email has changed and they no longer use that old email address. It's a bad one. You still want that person's name. Maybe there's other things tied to them, other payments. So I wouldn't just blindly delete them. It's not that it's a bad idea to do it. You just want to make that consideration. Um, okay. Yeah, if you want to change the donation amount, if it's a manual payment, just delete it and reprocess it. If it's a Zeffy payment where they purchased it online, that payment amount you can't just change and kind of bill the individual. Um, to create a list again, you're going to your contacts and then the top right, create, or excuse me, the middle lists and then the top right, create lists. So contacts, lists, create new lists. Mm, yeah, our contribution notices. Yeah, tax reporting, great question. Um, if if there's any eligible amount, tax eligible amount, that is included on the receipt to the donor as long as their email address is provided. So it's not in other words, as long as it's not a manual payment or a tap to pay where you didn't collect that. And then also once each year, Zeffy will send a consolidated report to the donor with all of their transactions through Zeffy or maybe through your organization in Zeffy. Um, to the donor for the end of the year reporting. So it is convenient from the tax perspective as well. And you can push those notifications out if somebody missed it or they need it to be sent again. I think that is where we will leave it. I know there's a bunch more questions.
Yes.
Julia will definitely share them with me and the team at Zeffy, and we'll try to get back to everybody as much as we can about the answers or clarifications.
Mm.
I'm also happy, always to connect with anybody offline if you have a follow-up that's kind of specific. Um, happy to kind of address that more nuanced or one-off questions.
Perfect. David, thank you so much for your time, insights. I know it was super valuable for folks. I'm dropping the link of our new community forum as well. If folks have questions, you can post them in the forum. You just need to log in with a Google or Microsoft SSO, and we have our Zeffy ambassadors monitoring the content there. But I will do my best to follow up with everyone here. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks again, David.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.